I'm 29 now, and I got married when I was 21. Back then, I truly loved her, and she seemed to love me too. Her family adored her, and everyone around us had nothing but good things to say. She was still studying in another city, and I was always the one driving her back and forth. Then our daughter was born. I started my own business, and things seemed to be going well. She finished her degree and started working. She became a doctor, by the way. But then I began to notice something different. She seemed distant, didn't enjoy my touch anymore, and sex became a rare occasion, happening maybe once a month, and even then, it was clear she wasn't into it. I tried everything to fix it. I talked to her, bought her gifts, and we even took trips to the sea. My parents were always there to look after our daughter when we went out. Then she started working late more often. I got it. Work can be demanding. I'm a hard worker myself, but I always made sure to prioritize her. One day, I picked up her phone, and there it was, messages between her and another man, full of love and longing. She wrote about how much she loved him, and how she looked forward to seeing him. They didn't mention anything explicitly about intimacy, but they talked around it. She even said she wasn't faking it with him, that her orgasms were real. And just so you know, things were fine between us too. She could have multiple orgasms with me. I was stunned reading all that. She noticed me holding her phone, and believe it or not, she lashed out at me right there in front of our daughter. She tried to snatch the phone from me, becoming hysterical. My daughter was terrified. I barely managed to calm her down and take her to her room to watch cartoons while my wife was crying in the bedroom, insisting that it was just a few messages and nothing more. She kept saying that she only loved me, but I didn't buy it. She had been begging for forgiveness for a week. Eventually, I found out who her lover was. Imagine, it was a 55-year-old man, her work colleague. Keep in mind, my wife is 28 years old. He even said he was too old for it to mean anything. I didn't believe him, but I forgave my wife. For the sake of our child. I was a fool to forgive her because it was just the beginning of a downward spiral. By then, money wasn't an issue. My business was thriving. We bought a car, a big house, and we were living comfortably, separate from our parents. She went to work at the hospital dressed in a mink coat. What more could she possibly need? I have no idea. Before I go on, I know you're probably thinking I'm a complete fool for sticking around, that I should have seen this coming. And honestly, you're right. I did think things would get better though. Plus, her lover was, to put it mildly, an old man. He looked more like 70 than 55, and even had a hearing aid. So I kept telling myself it wasn't worth losing sleep over. It's been a couple of months since I caught her cheating. Her behavior changed. She began to pay attention to me. Warmth, constant physical affection, cooked amazing dinners. In short, everything that was needed. But as you probably guessed, it didn't last long. Pretty soon, she became detached again, as if something was wrong. One night, while she was sleeping, I took her phone and checked the call and SMS records through her account. And damn it, I found something. It turns out that since I talked to her about their Facebook posts, they haven't stopped communicating, not for a single day. But now they've switched to texting and phone calls instead of chatting on Facebook. There were a ton of messages and calls every single day. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, she went to work, and I followed her. I couldn't take it anymore. I barged into her office, grabbed her phone, and started texting him from it. And guess what? The same thing happened. She attacked me, trying to wrestle the phone out of my hands. I showed her the call and SMS log, and she just kept apologizing, saying he kept messaging her, but it was nothing more than that. Just some compliments and conversation, no meetings, just chatting. And here we go again. Tears, apologies, and declarations that she only loves me. In short, we went through another dramatic week, and yes, like an idiot, I agreed to try again. Then I found out that he was on her friend list on another social network, and his number was saved in her phone. More arguments followed. She claimed it was work-related and eventually removed him from everything. Everything seemed to be fine again. She was attentive, understanding. We went on vacation together, went to the movies, talked with friends. I even started to relax and forget about all this. But as you probably guessed, everything went wrong again. So I decided to hire a detective. I bought her a new phone, but before giving it to her, the detective installed a tracking program on it. Everything from social networks, screenshots, and more. I soon found myself in a predicament again. The way they hid their tracks was just crazy. He created a fake page, posted several photos, and she left comments under them. He saw her comments, deleted them, and then changed his status. She will notice the status change and leave new comments. If it wasn't for the tracking program, I would never have understood how they communicate. The program also recorded the situation through the phone's microphone 24/7, so I knew that he was in her office every day. They chatted, joked, and planned meetings. It turns out that she even had an old-fashioned push-button phone with a separate SIM card at work, which he gave her. I was lost. I understood what was going on, but I needed irrefutable evidence, so I waited. I pretended everything was normal, smiled at her, and she acted all sweet in return. The craziest part, she'd sleep with me one night and go to him the next day. And I kept listening to all their conversations. I found out her relatives, her uncle and aunt, were in on it too. Can you believe it? They were actually advising her on how to cheat without getting caught. And it gets worse. I discovered that her lover had been giving her pills, tranquilizers. She got hooked on them, couldn't function without them, and had been taking them for more than 6 months. It felt like I was living in some twisted soap opera. But this was my reality. She must have sensed something was off because she started getting paranoid, suspecting I was onto her, but she couldn't figure out how. She even discussed with her lover how they should be more careful. He kept insisting they meet up in his car, but she was too scared. Her gut was telling her something wasn't right. Her workplace was being monitored. I wanted to catch her red-handed, but my nerves were frayed. Eventually, she told her lover that she suspected I was tracking her using the phone I'd given her. So she planned to leave it in her car at the parking lot while she went to meet him. Coincidentally, I was out of town at that moment, so I couldn't act on it. But I had their messages and knew what was going on. My nerves were shot. I couldn't even fake a smile at her anymore. That evening, after meeting her lover, she called me, suggesting we drink champagne and have steaks for dinner. Of course, I played along. At home, she was glowing, hugging and kissing me. I was just waiting for her to take our daughter to her parents for the night, so we could be alone, enjoying the champagne and dinner. When she left, the first thing I did was grab a knife and slash her fur coat, right down the back, deep enough so she couldn't wear it or sell it. Then, I poured myself a glass of champagne and waited. She came back all cheerful, sat down at the table, and I raised a toast to the old man's plaything before downing my drink in one gulp. She jumped up, offended, and demanded to know why I'd called her that. She was furious, shouting, "How could you say such awful things? Me? With an old man? Ugh, he's hideous with that hearing aid and all." I just sat there, smiling, and calmly began recounting their conversations from work, one by one. She kept denying it, insisting, "How could you even think that about me?" There were no insults from me. I just laid out everything I knew, and with each word, I felt lighter and lighter. Eventually, it hit her. This was the end. She knew I was onto everything, and I had the proof. Through her tears and snot, she confessed to cheating, admitting she didn't know what she'd been thinking. She also admitted she was hooked on the pills and couldn't stop taking them, and that she'd been helping her lover with some shady side work. It was a total mess, but nothing I didn't already know. Oh, and I should mention, she started crying when I told her I knew everything. She wanted to leave right then and there, claiming I'd insulted her, and made a beeline for the door. Naturally, she went to grab her fur coat, but when she opened the closet and saw it in tatters, she broke down, sobbing, "My fur coat, why, why?" That night, she went to her aunt and uncle's place. They took turns advising her that I wouldn't be able to prove anything and that nothing would come of this. The next morning, she asked me to help her find an apartment. She appeared as if nothing had happened and repeated the same hackneyed phrase. It was just a correspondence. She was already on the pill again, so I put all my cards on the table, telling her that I had overheard all her conversations with relatives. After all, there were a lot of tears, and she claimed to hate him and all that. I didn't make it public. Only my parents and close friends who helped me keep an eye on her knew about it. I let her stay with me until she finds another place to live. Yes, you can consider me a good guy, but I decided to leave everything as it is and move on. Let them do what they want. She's planning to start treatment for her addiction this week, and as for me, I'm doing fine. I've been in a new relationship for 2 months now. And here's the kicker. Everyone used to adore her. My friends and family all thought she was the perfect wife. Even my friends' parents would tell their sons to find a wife just like her. How wrong they were. Now she's constantly trying to win me back, begging for one last chance. So tell me, is it worth giving her that chance? Please, give me some advice on how to get rid of my ex, because she's seriously messing up my current relationship. I'd really appreciate it, dear listeners.